Paradise never left, we left it. Paradise is still waiting for us to come back. And one thing you find if you study the traditions in the East is that this peacock angel has always been a part of paradise. Lucifer fell in the Garden of Eden, but since that time he's always been the guardian of the Garden of Eden, which means that he's a guardian of the fourth dimension. So when you start experiencing the fourth dimension, there he is. He's the guardian of it. Interesting thing is that all the Pan-Pacific cultures refer to this Lemuria continent as the original Garden of Eden. That's where we all began. During many thousands of years, most of that continent has dropped to the bottom of the Pacific. What's left is the Pacific Islands. But there's still one part of it that is still referred to by much of the world as the Garden of Eden. Does anyone want to know what that is? Anyone like to guess?
Sri Lanka.
Oh, you cheater. You already know. Sri Lanka is the Garden of Eden. I'm going to show you a slide in a moment of Sri Lanka. There's the second highest peak there is called Adams Peak, and if you climb to the top of that, you'll find a big footprint about 5 feet long, and it's covered over with gold. And you find all these people around worshiping it. There's Buddhists, there's Hindus, there's Muslims, and they all say, this is footprint of Adam. This is where God set Adam in the Garden of Eden. Sri Lanka is what's left of Lemuria, and today it's considered the Garden of Eden. Another thing you find in Sri Lanka is the temples of this Sanat Kumara, this Lucifer, because he never left the Garden of Eden. He's still there. See? So everything's still there, except us. Lucifer is still there. The footprint of Adam. Everything's still there except us. We need to return back to it. Okay? So I'll tell you one more thing, and then we'll do some slides. This Kundalini master, this Sanat Kumara, he created many different Kundalini lineages. In these lineages, this great power of Kundalini was passed from one master to the next. Yeah? They were the cup holders, you might say. They were human holy grails. They held this energy of transformation, this Holy Spirit, this Kundalini. They were cups. They were holders of it. So we established many of these lineages, and all the masters of those lineages were able to awaken the Kundalini of their disciples, their students. Many of those lineages went north into India, and they still exist today. Right? A lot of the Kundalini masters today are descended from that original master, that original Kundalini master. But there was one very special lineage that went west, and that's what we're specifically concerned with today. This is what I'm referring to as the Holy Grail lineage. Right? It went west with the people known as Mandeans. Mandeans are the only surviving Gnostic sect on the planet today. They live in southern Iraq. They do a lot of baptizing in the Tigris-Euphrates rivers. You study the Mandean traditions, they all say we started in Sri Lanka. They have a sect within their tribe known as the Nasirai. The Nasirai are the Kundalini masters. So they have a tradition of Kundalini masters within their sect. The Nasirai comes from Nas, meaning serpent. These are the serpent masters. All right? They're serpent masters because they had awakened the inner serpent, the inner Kundalini. They had moved that through their body, through that system, and they had actually become consumed by it. They had become serpents. They become pure energy. They become pure Kundalini. Yeah. So the Mandeans took that wisdom, took that knowledge, took that power from Sri Lanka, went west. They merged with a number of different cultures along the way. They merged with the Egyptian culture. They merged with the Sumerian culture. Finally, they merged with the Essene sect of the Jews. All right? And they, at that point, lived along the Dead Sea. They lived in Qumran with the Essenes. And it was at that time that one of their greatest prophets, and in fact their last prophet, John the Baptist, was born. John the Baptist was essentially enlightened from birth and full of the Holy Spirit from birth, which means that he was a Kundalini master from birth. That Holy Spirit is Kundalini. He spent all his life baptizing in the River Jordan and activating Kundalini energy. Of course, his prime disciple, his foremost disciple was Jesus, and we know how when Jesus was baptized by John, that a dove came down and alighted on him, that there was lightning. These are symbols of Kundalini activation. It was at that time that John the Baptist actually transferred his power, the power of the lineage, to Jesus. Jesus passed it to two of his primary apostles, John the Apostle and Mary Magdalene, the two that were at the base of the cross when Jesus breathed his last breath. That's when the transmission occurred. After that time, the lineage was passed down a long line of grandmasters, each of whom was named John. That was their title. See, John was never really a name, it was a title. It means he of Gnostic power and wisdom. John actually began on Sri Lanka with this Kundalini master because one of his names was Yan Pandita. Yan is the Sanskrit word for Gnostic wisdom. Yan Pandita, the father of Gnostic wisdom. The father of Gnostic wisdom is actually the Kundalini itself, because that's what it gives you. And that's what this original Kundalini master was. He was pure Kundalini. He is the original serpent on the tree. Yeah? And he's still in the Garden of Eden. So all the Gnostic sects really begin with him. So John means he of Gnostic power and wisdom. So this line continued down until the time of the Templars. And when the Templars showed up during the time of the First Crusade, the ruling grandmaster of this Holy Grail lineage was a man named Theoclete, who referred to himself as the John, but he also called himself Theoclete. And he, at the time, was introduced to the first grandmaster of the Knights Templars, known as Huda Peons. And soon after that, he transferred that whole lineage, that whole Holy Grail lineage, the power, the wisdom, to Huda Peons. And so from that point on, the Knights Templar tradition, the Knight Templar order was married to that Holy Grail lineage that began in Sri Lanka. They became one with it. And this is why, soon after that, all these Holy Grail legends were written in Europe. You know? Because it was at that time that the Templars learned about this Holy Grail lineage that began with the first Fisher King and had existed for many thousands of years. So the Templars took this lineage back into Europe, and they started practicing some